All right, well, welcome to the channel. My name is David. I'm the host of Faithless Ministries, and today we have a special guest, a brother in the Creator, and he will be sharing with all of us his story about where he came from and how he got to where he is. So I'm really looking forward to it. I have talked to him a few times in the past, but this is the first time we've really dedicated some time to really get to know each other. And he has asked me to call him by his Hebrew name, and I'm going to ask him to pronounce it for me.
That's fine. It is Raniyah.
Raniyah.
Yes, and
Okay.
I think like a texture. It means song of God.
Yeah, so. That's cool. That's cool. So I'm really glad you texted me for several reasons, but the first reason is I really want to know the story behind that.
Behind that? Oh, behind the name?
Yeah.
Well,
like how did you get it? Was it given to you at birth, or was it a found name, or like what is the story with I
brainstorm again asking for wisdom and something that will harmonize me with the Creator. Looking at Hebrew and everything, I know the Yah, even though it means differently, I guess you say in Owaspy, Yah in Hebrew is representative of God. So I wanted some kind of name like Jeremiah, Nehemiah, something that would reflect. So again, I kind of took my own portions of my government name, I guess you could say, and I combined it with the Yah portion. And then when I looked it up, like, oh, it actually has a meaning.
Oh,
and that it kind of came together like kind of serendipitously on my end. But that is what I won by brothers on my channel, host Raniyah, just a facilitator, kind of like you're doing on your channel and everything.
That's cool.
But it's a new name, a new beginning, I guess you could put it that way. And that's how
I like it. Yeah, found names usually have a lot more significant meaning to the carrier than their given name, because it seems like the name finds you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, I have nothing wrong with my given name, and it may mean counselor and so forth of that nature, or king. I have no issue with it, but again, I wanted something that had a symbolism toward the Creator in this new journey, especially as we're going into the Owaspy. I want something going to Hebrew or going into Hebrew Israelite Judaism. I guess it's kind of a blend of both, but something that's reflective.
Yeah, I was just telling my wife earlier today that what I have been able to gather is that you have a more blended system of belief and knowledge than strictly, one thing or the other, which is going to make a really interesting conversation. So I'm really excited to dig deep into that.
I most certainly do. Like,
before you get into that, tell me about your childhood. Like, what did you start out as? Like, what was your faith journey growing up?
I started Southern Church, a Church of Christ. So it was, I guess, what I knew at that time, a small Black congregation, pretty much family and everything. For me, it always came down to wanting more out of the relationship. Let's put it this way. You can tell when people, they're doing things, they're coming to a place, but it seems like it's never to truly give fully of themselves or to be vulnerable or open. And I just found that as a problem. People will come, it's just kind of a tradition, and that's it. People come and then they'll leave immediately after without there really being bonds and connection. And for me, it became very shallow, dull, if you will. Just the repetition of it without people becoming like the Bible says, becoming children. Like, as you see a child, they may get in a fight with someone, but they're easily playing the next moment with them. And just that stagnation where no one really like, give you an example, people will stand up, like, say, brothers and sisters, I have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. When he asks them, well, what is it? and no one wanted to share what it was. And again, I found myself doing that too. And then finally, when I got to college, experienced like a campus ministry where people actually expose their life. Like, what do you struggle with? What are your sins? What can we pray for? What can I hold you accountable for? And that
Right.
was what I was longing for. Now everything has its ebb and flow, it's up and down, and we'll get to that. And eventually, that came to an end as well, sunset. But
Uh,
for the time, again, people again get married, go off. The convictions may change, and I'm still seeking for the same thing.
mm,
To seek that continuation where it's just again, in no way am I saying that I'm perfect or anything like that. But that dynamic where people are truly knit together, like there,
right.
nothing is hidden, and that's my tip. Like when anyone has invited me to any church, okay, that's my first question. How open are you? Will you tell me what you're struggling with? And most people, that's it. Okay, then that's the kind of fellowship we would have. Like I have no desire to join any assembly where people are uncomfortable,
Yeah.
truly being real. Like there's no place for pride. Again,
Well, it feels like the whole setup, no matter what sort of denomination. I mean, I've only been a part of one Seventh-day Adventist, which is very sort of outside of the mainstream Christianity, and then I was part of a non-denominational church for a
mhm,
few years. But it's set up, it's kind of like very defensive, right?
yes,
You know, um, being right is a very big part of it, and it doesn't lead to a lot of intimacy in
yes,
relationships within the church, and definitely with outside of the circle. There's not a lot of closeness there
yes.
because of the judgment and the sort of defensiveness of whatever.
Just to give you kind of case in point, even though we've known each other for a shorter period of time, I spent more time talking to you. They're just being real, like and like the willingness of people are the true concern. Like when you leave, it's like, oh, we miss you. Well, what'd you miss?
Right.
What are you really missing about me? What do you know about me that is just my presence and a cheer?
I was I
That,
was thinking about this just a couple days ago. If I went back to any one of the congregations that I left, they would probably say something like, "So how's it been going? What have you been going? You know, what's up with your life?" I was like, "Y'all had my number in the directory for 2 years. Like at this point, we're starting over. Like you don't even know
yeah,
me. You
yeah.
know, you had all that time to check in on me, see how I was doing." But yeah, they outside of the form, if it's like going to a formal putting on your formal tux, going
Hmm.
to an event. It's like church is like a formal gathering. It's the form of religion. It's not
Yes.
doesn't permeate the life. It's an event.
Actually,
A ritual.
one
It's a ritual that is isolated to itself. I don't know. It's an interesting. I mean, not all churches are going to be the same, but that's my experience.
it's interesting you said form, because Paul in one of the letters talks about having like people having a form of godliness and then have nothing to do with them.
Right.
Literally in the Bible, like it's a form of godliness, but have nothing to do with the forms.
Mm-hmm.
And inadvertently, because I was seeking for more, I had no desire for just that form. I guess for me, it's another form of deception or it's a lie. You're breaking the commandment because no one wants to be really real. Like being real, everyone experiences the same thing. Like everyone has faults that they fall into.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was in your same shoes, then I perhaps would fall into the same temptation. I guess that's my view. But now some people may use it as something to try to hold over you, but that's the whole
Yeah.
point. Like at baptism, if you look in the Gospels, that's what we're doing. They were confessing all of them. They had everything in common. But the problem is, modern day church is no one does that. And so if someone can feel like they're hiding something, and then they can hold whatever they find out about you as dirt or leverage over you. And this felt this just it's just a weird situation. And but you can see it. Like people may never confess it, but you just observe their lives and you know what it is, even though they never expound upon it vocally themselves.
Yeah, on one hand, you have the Protestant church that doesn't do any of the confession stuff, and on the other hand, you have the Catholic Church, which uses it as a form of salvation. And where's the middle? Where's the balance?
Purifying your heart and people who have commonalities in common without judging one another, but each one is striving to serve each other and the Creator and all who come in their pathway as much as possible. Well, at least that's the middle ground for me.
But like an institutional middle ground, you don't really find it out there. So when you were sort of reflecting on what you felt was missing, it was more of the sort of social congregational intimacy was lacking. Was that also a trigger for you to start studying more, or did that happen later?
It was the spiritual aspect as well. Most people define their church going by either talking about other people or events. And I want to talk more so of the things that I've read in the scriptures. And I found that most people had no desire. First thing, because most people never read it. So like it's kind of hard for you to talk about something you're supposed to have in common, but one party is lacking. I remember going to a funeral one time, and someone who I knew way back in my childhood, 20 years, and it's like, finding this individual had never read the Bible all the way through. Like it's one book. Like in college, I read through many books. We're talking about one book. You say that you believe in it, but you have no idea what it says, and then you pretty much just leave it to the New Testament only without the historical backdrop. So you can make whatever you want. The terms can mean whatever you want without them being defined. It's like, well, how's that going to work? What if I started like the Harry Potter series in the middle? Like, I could fill everything else ahead of it with whatever I wanted, or any whatever book you could just fill in whatever. It's like this makes no sense. Like, but no one's holding each other. That's the problem. No one holds each other accountable. No one knows truly what's going on, and it's like it's just show for the most part.
The problem, at least that I've witnessed and sort of experienced, is that when you start really truth seeking and really going below the surface and asking some questions, you're going to ask questions that are kind of and you're just asking questions. You're going to ask questions that are out there. Like, your mind is actually engaged in the process of curiosity. So you're going to ask questions that are crazy. But the process of curiosity is the process of curiosity. There is no appetite for crazy questions. If anytime you go off script, you're viewed as rebellious or ignorant or
I was told I had a demon.
Oh, I was never told that, but I got the feeling that everyone thought I was just trying to stir the pot when I really was just trying to be curious. And some of the questions are, I remember asking questions and making statements, not that they're statements of truth, but statements of like, oh, could this possibly, is this something you guys have thought about? And I remember this is when I was in a very small Bible study. Just the whole room, just like, oh, here he goes again. It's like, God, but we're not even discussing anything new here. We're just reading and we're on a script. Like, let's get off the script, even if it's crazy. Let's get off the script. We can get that process of curiosity going. So, yeah, they were frustrated with me. I was frustrated with them, and I was in this Bible study group probably about 6 months after I stopped being a Christian. I never did tell them that's why I left. I did invite them to come to me, and if they wanted to continue this, relationship together, to find me and ask why did you leave the Bible study? And then I told him I would be happy to have a conversation one-on-one, but then nobody was curious enough to ask me, so that's fine. No
That,
hard feelings.
that reminds me, like, whether it was Jehovah's Witnesses or Seventh-day Adventists, they came to the door, and when I challenged them with questions, when it came too hard, then it's like, oh, we gotta go. And but I thought you came to my door because you had time. Like, you like, oh, we have to go. We have something else to take care of. But you was going to someone else. Like, so you have no time to answer questions that are difficult. That
Our
someone
car
familiar
just
with it.
popped a tire, even though we're walking.
First, like at first it was two females, and then the guy came in when it was too tough for them, and then he's like, he just pulled the females away, and like, isn't that something? You know, like when the going gets tough,
Yeah.
then we will get going, I guess. Well,
I
that's
can
what it seemed
totally
like.
relate to their mindset though, because I was very indoctrinated into
Mm,
the church, and I felt so sincere and convicted, and but I didn't have any tools to actually understand what I believed. I just had
yeah.
the script, and it's like, if you get off script, then you're totally lost
Hmm.
because you don't have it. You're like in the deep end now.
Yeah. It's that critical thinking skill. Like, I mean, that's what you're trained in school, right? You're trained how to go to script. You have A, B, C answer, but there's really few like open answer response questions and get
Right.
to graduate or get to the next level. Now you get that in graduate school, you know, and when you're paying money for it. But most people, like I know for me, I did because of the pathway I chose. It was more vigorous, challenging, and I wanted that. Even in the academic space, I wanted something that challenged my mind. But I mean, just going down the pathway of certain years in just traditional schooling as well. You have the ABCD, and you're just trained to be a good employee, just staying in line, just staying
Yeah.
in line. But
Yeah.
that was never enough for
That's
me.
the point of school, man. Get a good worker.
That
Punch
was
that clock.
that's it. But
So
yeah,
let
I
me
mean,
let me ask you this. So you started being dissatisfied, then you started searching. What
mhm.
was the first like aha moment, either intellectually, like with a specific text, or like with a community, like, oh, this is the right direction. This feels like light bulbs going off. Like, what was that for you?
Let me everything. I know this is later on, so I may well just jump in because I know you said talk about things from the very beginning when you gave me kind of a preview what to talk about, but I think the moment actually came outside of the congregation, if you believe that. Um, I had joined Amway, you know, Amway,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
multi-level, and there was a book by the name of The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh,
And I mean, this is the irony of it. Something outside
that got
is
you
what
thinking.
actually got triggered. And the thing about it, was it the text per se that got me? No, it was the instructions of what to do with that text. And what I was told to do with the text, The Rich Man in Babylon, to absorb it was to read each chapter 3 times, like the morning, evening, and then night, and do that for 30 days for each chapter. Well, have a few fingers in 30, but
Yeah,
I guess.
that's a lot.
um, so I like at that time I was like, man, I've been drifting so far off, even looking at the Bible, going here and there, business means everywhere, trying to establish this. And what I decided to do was, you know what? I want to see what Jesus said. Yeshu, whoever, like whatever name you want, Joshua, if you will. And what I decided was I'm going to look at the Beatitudes, Matthew 5 through 7, and I'm
Hmm.
going to read that and do the same thing. So I put that aside, the richest man in Babylon, follow the instructions that I was given. And when I read it, like it's like shells fell off my eyes. Like, hold on a second. This is different than what the teachers are telling me.
Hmm.
When you read it, I read it over and over and over 90 times. It was like, and that's when like, oh, something's off.
Something's off.
Something's off. Um, one of the first things was like Jesus continued to tell him like until like that he came to fulfill. And when I started looking at the word fulfilled, like most people will write it off as fulfilled with two L's at the end, like oh he came to do away with it. But then I started looking at the concordance at the Strong's for fulfill with just one L, Fullfil, just one L.
Mm-hmm.
And it had more the connotation of filling to the brim. So whatever was lacking, he came to fill the brim, never to throw away. And that changes everything because most people come in like, oh, he nailed it. It was thrown away. Now you're free to do whatever. Now it's the law of Christ, with law of Christ never meaning anything. Well, how do you love? Like, what is the love? Like, I get to choose whatever at this point. Because if that's the case, then many people choose self-love was the love of Christ, right? Like you get to define however you want, and you can be as selfish as you want. Like it's still love.
Right.
And that's when I started questioning, like, okay, me looking at the commandments, like I have 10 fingers, 10 toes. Is there a sign or signal there's 10 commandments? Like this is supposed to be a foundation. Why is everyone reversing? Why are we doing this Sunday thing? Why we never the Sabbath? I never see in the Bible where that was changed or refuted. I see Jesus doing it. I see that, okay, as long as you were serving your brother, then and you have that kind of like order of operation. If you're just doing it for selfish purpose, yeah, just take the time off. But if you're serving your fellow man, then that's the whole point. And then I see, okay, wait, Sunday is that's the reverse. What the creator's about giving and like him being last, but even that time being last was on serving versus Sunday is worshiping first and then like kind of a selfish like me first and then everything left afterward. And just looking at the symbol and just start asking the ministers, wait, why are you doing this? Why are we practicing? Again, they're supposed to have an answer. Like they're supposed to be prepared in season and out season to give a reason why they believe what they believe and
Mm-hmm.
why I should be following them as a member.
Right.
I got more answers from my house church leader, the smaller group, and the district, like the zone leader, I guess you could call them, than I got from the minister. They
Yeah.
sat down with me. When I got to the minister, he just pretty much gave me an ultimatum. Like, hold on a second, you have no scriptures at all.
Oh
Like,
man.
whoa, that blew my mind because I was so like, am I really thinking that wrong? Like, I'm reading this, like, I'm comprehending, but this is off. And then when I get to the top boss, he gives you no scriptures. Hey, you just like it's like a trust me, bro. Like I've studied this a lot.
Yeah.
That's unsatisfactory. like yeah, well, how many other things are you doing this with? It's trust me, bro.
Yeah,
Um,
really.
like no, prove it. Prove all things, hold to that which is good, is what the
Yeah.
Bible says. And like you're telling me, I'm quoting things from the scriptures, like, nah, you're supposed to be overseeing my soul, and you're unable to give an answer for something that's straightforward, like the symbolism of this
Yeah.
day, why you're doing it. Because that's one of the things. If you look at the commandments, like y'all should have no other gods, talking about the creator. Now I know that has been adjusted and twisted by false gods according to philosophy. But when you get to the background, okay, yes, only the creator himself. Well, some ways that people serve other gods is by what days they celebrate. And it's like, well, hold on a second. If that's what distinguish different gods, different feast days and so forth, then you better tell me why I'm doing at that time. Like, why am I doing this? And am I truly serving the creator or am I serving someone who has imposed them first, and then you do your things later? I want service first with no proof of anything, and then you do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded very self-serving at that point in time. It seemed like the very opposite to me. That
Right.
sounded satanic.
So
And so
you're a Saturday Sabbatarian at the moment.
I do keep the Sabbath, yes.
Um, have and you keep Saturday as a way of distinguishing yourself from a false kind of authority above you. Is that right?
Yes, I know in the Owasso it talks about like one of the virtues, I believe, was order. So that Sabbath count keeps a certain order. Like I am last, and even when I am last, I'm here to serve. That's the meaning of that. That just establishing that order within your week, and then saying that even when it is my time, my free time, I get to serve other people
Mm-hmm.
and be of service, and just reset my mind. Like if there's no break at all, then again, our mind is small at this time compared to what we will become. So we need some of this kind of system with a limited amount of process that we have right now. And that weekly pattern is what allows me to reset. Or just feel like, okay, I have a new beginning. The eighth day, symbolic of a new beginning
Mm-hmm.
coming forth. So that is part of why, and my rationale, my reason why, yes, this is a good thing. Versus, like I said, there's no reason for the Sunday worship itself that the Catholic Church said, okay, by our authority, we're going to
Yeah.
change the thing. You really look in there on the catechism, they literally give that as the answer. Like, so Protestants are really Catholics. Like, you're still following them. You're still following them. Like, okay, you broke off, but you're still following their doctrine because they said they established that.
So does it,
Like,
have you ever, I mean, does it bother you that Saturday is sort of disconnected from um nature? Like it doesn't actually follow, um does it bother you that it's the Gregorian calendar, or is it more of just the principle of shifting your mindset to being, last in the sort of your mindset of last day of the week, and that's your service day? I mean, my question is,
I'm just trying. Yeah, I'm trying to
my
confuse.
question is it more of a mindset shift for you, or is it critical that it is like a specific day, an appropriate day? Because I have a follow-up question if depending on how you answer.
Okay. Um, I would just saying it's one or the other, I think would be a fallacy. I believe it's both of them. Like
Okay.
like with everything else, there's a spectrum, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
Um, More so within my heart, I guess it would say like, it's creating that order.
Mhm.
Especially as I draw back and realize at the greater universe, then there's different ways of measuring time. Like if we go to a galactic scale, well, 1 year, a rotation within a galaxy is millions of years. So how does that fit into it when I'm at that scale? But on this scale that I'm at right now, then
Mhm.
me following, I guess you say, the zodiac, if you will, the constellation in the 364-day calendar versus 365.2425
Right.
day year, and it's continued to change. That is more important to the level where I'm at this point in time. So I see that flexibility, but where I'm at right now, I feel like
I was
that's
just curious
appropriate.
if you ever looked into the Gregorian calendar, and how the calendar is, it's not really set up, it's not really described from A to B. It's just more of a treasure hunt of clues of how the timekeeping was kept in the Old Testament, and you can see it in the Gospels too. But
I follow the Enochian calendar, 364 days.
huh.
So it's a
Okay.
little, it's a little bit, yeah. I have that matched up with the Gregorian calendar,
Mm-hmm.
but it's gonna always be off. It's
Okay.
one, it's gonna be always off. Like,
I'm just looking at that.
yeah.
To me, it's more of a curiosity, because a lot of, like, I grew up Seventh Day Adventist, and
Mhm.
nobody had any idea why we were keeping Saturday, as opposed to, because in Genesis, the sun, moon, and stars were given for our timekeeping, and the Gregorian calendar really doesn't honor any of it. Not really. I mean, maybe the sun cycle is the most. The Gregorian calendar, I think, is a solar calendar, but it doesn't have any respect to the moon, I don't believe. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I studied calendars probably about 6 years ago,
Mhm.
and I brought some questions to people, Adventist people, and they didn't have any answers for me. And ever since then, I've been really curious about time, recording time, and all the different systems and stuff. So I didn't know if you had how deep you've gone down that rabbit hole. But
I've gone down that pathway. I know it's a Notion calendar, but it's also the Essene calendar.
okay.
They have 364, and that's where it's detailed out. Now there's portions that's missing, but because it's systematic, you can fill in the blanks, even for the fragments. If you are studious to it, you can fill in the blanks, and that's exactly what I did.
I'll have to look that up because that's interesting. I never heard of the Essene calendar. I've heard of the Essenes, but I've never heard of
Yes. The Quorum Caves, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that was part of the search, and it has 364 days. It matches up, like I think, Strange Past and Chronicles with the different priests as well. It is elaborate, and like when you really understand what you have there, it's written in just like written form. But I drew it out with Excel.
Yeah.
And I put everything in place, and it's a cycle that repeats every 3 years. And it has the sun, moon, and the stars, because it talks about windows, and there's 12 windows. It
that
includes
sounds
all
like Enoch.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said they're kind of synonymous. Notion calendar is the Essene
Okay.
calendar. But I just call it a Notion because that would be who earlier where the Quorum Caves were discovered, the Essenes.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos on the Enoch calendar. I didn't study enough to like be able to talk about it myself, but it was interesting to observe the study of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like things can happen simultaneously. So yes, you have, as I've told someone else, you have 365.245 days. This is the corrupted, I guess you could say, or the part of creation that is going to stop at some point in time, that is breaking down the corporeal earth and every from a lower vibration from the higher vibration that fell. And then you have that calendar 364 that stays perfected because it's focusing on the luminaries. And that's what the Israelites were given, but then they turned worldly, and then they start following everyone else. And so that's that, and it was lost altogether as far as the timing. But there's certain key points, like at least what I use to reestablish, even looking at the patterns of the full moons, and there's only one in that cycle that lands on, like you say, the middle of the week, which is where the Genesis, the middle of the week. Literally, that's the way the calendar starts on a Wednesday, the middle of the week. When you investigate, again, most people, I mean, there's nothing so like if people follow what other people have established because they feel like, okay, they have a broken line. But if you find the Essene, the Dead Sea Scrolls, like I can recreate this myself.
Yeah.
Just no one's telling you about it, but you can recreate it. And then what I went outside and did was I went and looked at the sun, moon, and stars. I went and test and prove all things for myself. Someone else may disagree, but because you want to test it for yourself, at least at that point in time, like, okay, I'm confident I can share with people. And that's exactly what I would want someone to do in church selling. Like, okay, how did you do it? How can I repeat it? Versus, hey, just trust me. Or that's how we've been always doing it.
One of the questions I asked to Adventists is, if you were on an island for years and you had no idea what day of the week you got on there, so you wouldn't know when the Sabbath was, how would you be able to figure it out on an island? Nobody had the answer to it because they're not used to looking at the sun, moon, and stars. But if you had 3 years, that cycle, if you had 3 years and you're studious, you could figure out the calendar without any outside input.
You can create, yes, you can create shadows as well to see what time, like where, again, going to the shadow, where it's at, the sun is in the middle of the heavens.
Yeah, you'd have to have at least a couple of years to establish like the solstices and equinoxes and, just some bigger patterns that only come around, but, and then, well, you'd be able to do it, but you can't do it. The Gregorian calendar is sort of arbitrary, It's not based on nature, not in a way that you can duplicate on an island.
Yes. like I said, you can figure it out with sundials and so forth. Like that's how they did it back in the day.
Mhm.
And if you're observing everything, yes, you can line it back up. But yes, you require special equipment, I guess you say, with the like that only certain laboratories can confirm. And like
Right.
that makes me feel uncomfortable. If everyone else and I have to go to some specialist for it,
Hmm.
that makes me suspicious. Like, no, I want to be able to test out for myself.
Yeah, we celebrate the Sabbath according to the moon phases, and
Mhm.
we debated about, you know, how, because we both had took a break from Christianity for a while. We're like, so if we're gonna do this, let's talk about it. Like, what's gonna be. And after doing it for a year, it's really cool to be able to actually to look at the moon and say, oh, Sabbath, you kind of get in sync with it. Oh, I can tell Sabbath is going to be in a couple of days, then I can confirm it, exactly with a calendar. But it feels more connected, and we are obviously still using Gregorian calendar for everything else, but it's nice to have some element of the natural creation involved with our, worship and conversation. And so,
They're
which
all
is some,
connected. They're all connected. Like the sun, moon,
right.
and star are connected. It's just that if we're just basing it off of the selfish circulation of us around the sun versus taking everything. Like
Yeah.
how can I put it? It's like you having hours, minute, and seconds when you use the sun, moon, and stars, but we're just using the sun by itself,
Right.
and that throws everything off. And but like neither are just using the moon by itself, but you're using the Essene calendar is using all three of them
That's cool. I'm gonna
to
have to look at that.
calculate
I
from
mean,
my what I'm studying.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I know you have a mix of beliefs, so I really want to get into that. When did you start really digging into Old Testament, like sort of the Hebrew roots kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but in my head, I think like Hebrew roots movement, where you started really getting into the Torah. Like how long ago was that?
Hmm. I want to say probably 2016, 2017. That's when I started the pathway when I was in Amway at that point in time.
Mhm.
And I mean that's when I left. That was around the time that I left Amway because again we had all these meetings and meetups on Saturday. They had their like ventures off, and then we have group meetings and everything. I'm like I can no longer do this. It made it
Mhm.
difficult because most
Yeah,
people again they have no regard
they don't
at all,
they don't get it.
and like okay like at first I was concerned with the job I was working at the time, but they were cool with it. It was actually something else that came, so it was no concern with that because I guess they can do nothing as far as like religious persecution, so to speak, on the workplace.
Mhm.
But I did have someone else who all of a sudden got upset because I told them that they were unable to use certain equipment. And that was the gym policy, but they just run a nasty later, and I got fired
Oh,
for that. Like again, it just things like what I was expecting, and then just like a month or so later, like it all fell apart. Like okay, I like so nervous and everything initially. Like okay, people gonna receive it, but they were cool with that. But then something else came up.
yeah.
I got caught in the crossfires with something else as well. The
Mhm.
manager was finding a scapegoat. Let's leave it at that. They were trying to find a scapegoat. I became the scapegoat
Yeah.
because of their lack of documentation, and there's nothing I could do because it was just my word versus theirs, and I was the
On
newest
to,
to
on to
there, I
bigger and
guess.
better things.
Yes, one of the bigger and better things. But yeah, what were you saying, David?
I was wanting, so about, let's see here, about what do you say, 6 or 7 years ago, you really got into the Torah, and that is what you're talking about with your job, and
Yes.
you're worried about that. Were you able to find like a community to sort of mentor you, or was this a solo journey for you, or just like talking to people online, or how was that?
It was more so people online. I know there was one person who was looking at in particular, Kabbalah. I know that he sent me his iPhone and everything, and we had communicated. But when I started digging deeper and sharing about, I guess, the Hebrew and Israelites, he kind of went away. He had no ear to hear anything, or like, even though I listened to him, he was unwilling to hear anything the other way, and we lost track of each other at that point.
Yeah.
I did go to a Jewish synagogue that believed, I guess you say, in Jesus.
Oh, Messianic Jews.
Yeah, Messianic Jews.
Okay.
It was just worst thing. It was so far away. Like it was an hour and a half, 2 hours from where I stayed. The closest one as I searched by. So the situation financially and everything made it kind of hard gas wise. But on top of that, I guess the experience, or what I may have talked to you just already about this, but it was kind of off-putting, I guess. One of the things was just the whole kissing of the Torah. Like,
Oh,
feel like
okay.
let's going into like more so idolization, like that
Mhm.
as far as the creator, like nothing coming before, okay, this dream world that we're in, that is never the creator, but maybe misunderstanding, or again seeing that as something like, well, okay, I understand respecting the word, like, but that's never the end all be all of it, the fullness
Right.
of it. um and then it was just the whole idea that it was a Friday night, and then I was talking to the minister, and then like me looking at again what they define as the Sabbath. Their son was going to work that night. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. That for me, like, wait, he's going to work at the movie theater. Like, wait, what? But I thought your Sabbath was well,
They
like at
go
the time,
all the
sunset to
trouble,
sunset.
all the trouble to create a whole new Sabbath, and they don't even keep it.
I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Like, you're the Jewish,
Um,
like, yeah, like again, Jewish, like that means something slightly different to me now.
yeah.
I know that anyone can be Jewish because that's the religion. When you look in the book of Esther, many people were becoming Jews. Now it's reflective of Judah, the tribe of Judah, but anyone can be that, and as opposed to being native born or of an actual tribe,
Well, it's
which
supposed to be tracked through the mother, right? The genealogy.
no, that's when you look at the Bible, it's very clear that it's patriarchal. That you look at all the scriptures, like the genealogies through the father. Israel's the 12 tribe of Israel. There's
Well,
nothing
yeah,
of my
that's
mother.
true.
So
Somehow
that's made.
in the modern, I've heard maybe it's a modern convention that gets tracked through the mother. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
when people are putting themselves into it, if it's the mother side they can track it through, then yes, they do. And that's part of the distortion. But when you look at the Bible, look at the Torah itself, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I never hear about Sarah, um, Rebecca.
Right.
I never hear about the matriarch is patriarchal from Adam, the King David, Solomon. Like you look at the Matthew account, like all the patriarchs going on to Jesus. Like where are we getting this from? People added that to input themselves into the genealogy, but that's never something from what you call the main Torah itself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just examine it. Like anyone look at it for themselves, and then you start
Yeah.
questioning, well, where's this coming from? um,
Interesting.
so again, just study it, prove all things. That's what I mean. I'll look at the text that you're giving me, but
Yeah.
if I see nothing to verify, like okay, someone tacked this on.
Yeah. So you're getting into Torah observance for a few years, like 4 or 5 years, and then you found a WASPy, right? 3 or 4 years.
There's many other things that I've ventured into as well. I mean, like I said, I look at it as all this light in everything, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna absorb that. And for me to close my mind when I know the Creator is infinite would be folly, would be foolishness on my behalf.
Right.
Um, even taking just the tenets of again the scriptures that I read, and I know most people they never read it for. I can never say that they never, but from my observation, from the people that I've seen, as
Mm-hmm.
far as putting into practice, there's certain words that open are like segues to be inclusive. Most
Mm-hmm.
people never see it that way. So again, like I said, prove all things with that which good. It never gave a limit to okay, just prove it based on the Bible that's right before your face. No, prove all things. All things mean all things. It
Right.
says whatever lovely, whatever pure, think on these things. Well, there's things that are lovely and pure outside of the Bible. So if it's good, then I'm gonna think on those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bible actually, when me I studied for myself, like that's what led me to be more corporate, and then also become all things to all men.
Mm-hmm.
So that you might win a few. Like, well, okay, so if I'm gonna become all things to all men, then I have to kind of know about what other men are interested in,
Right.
as
Yeah.
opposed to, so like, like for me, it's like it's shocking to me when I'm reading all these scriptures in the Bible that are saying, hey, you gotta be inclusive. And even with Peter, when he gets a vision and he's like, oh, those things are unclean. Other people outside of my nation clean. Like, and he's been told, like, call nothing in the vision, call nothing I made clean, unclean, unclean. That's inclusion. Like, so what's the deal? Again, those are the kind of questions I see all these scriptures that are lining up that saying, hell, you look at more of everything, and stop being judgmental in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that you're condemning someone to. Now, if it's something that is morally wrong, yes, you got to make a judgment, so you stay away from that.
Right.
If you have a whole bunch of group of people that want to go like rob and beat up people, like no, you got to stay away from that. Um, Certain things you just stay away from it. You have to make a judgment. You have to be discerning.
Yeah.
But where you just wholesale, you're going to hell. I can never do that anymore. I can never think
Yeah.
that way because that's wrong. That's the judgment that's condemned in the Bible.
Right. Well, the reason why I'm bringing that up because I wanted to get like a time frame of your study. When you did find a WASPy, you had been studying pretty in depth for years. My
Yes.
question, I guess, what I'm really wanting to know is how did a WASPy affect your or did it um, did it allow you to re-examine anything that you had been studying? I mean, what contributions did a WASPy play in where you're at right now?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot in it. I mean,
Yes,
and
there's a lot in it. Um, it filled in the holes. Um, I know people will argue back and forth about the whole Genesis account. I just look at the WASPy just expounding upon it. I I know people have gone for the literal 6 days, 7 days. When I studied for myself, I never came under that impression. First thing, like you said, sun, moon, and stars created on the fourth day. Well, that's our metrics of time. How can it be a literal day if the measurement tools for a day were to be created? And when you look under the word yom, it can mean age. That's one that so I never thought, okay, it's a longer period of time than just 24-hour literal
mm-hmm,
days. So that would never like, so when I read it, okay, I understand like the day, a great day. You have like the great day when we or is it called a day? Or a great year when we talk about the whole revolution or the the what is it when you're going through the different constellations. I forgot what it's called at this point in time, but it's called something great, something a great year or something of that
mm,
nature. So you have different measurements, and based on what's around you, you define a day and age differently.
right.
So for me, it that never was an issue that okay, I had thought locked in that it could only be 24 days and everything outside of that is blasphemous.
Mm-hmm,
So for me, when I looked at like the Book of Jehovah, I saw, okay, no, this is just different times when different elements came together and formed. And then another layer came on another period of time. And he said in the beginning, there was darkness. Okay, that's when everything, like Shenmue and everything was in that darkness. I just saw this, again, this was a summation of it, but
mm-hmm,
never that it was like contradictory. I know some people go there if they take it what many people think as a literal 24-hour day. But for
right.
me, because I try to look at it at every angle that I can, it never affected or hit me that way. Like, okay, that confirmed what I thought. That was more so what I thought. Like that's what it confirmed versus like, oh man, I'm frightened because
I,
my whole world's been turned upside down.
I gotta start over.
Oh, No, 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 no.
what about like philosophy or like what? I know you haven't read all of the WASP, like
Mm-hmm.
right, but
That's
what
correct.
is, as you're going through it, or your process, um, it has a very unique perspective. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me ask you, what was the first thing that you read in a WASP that was like put in a way a different perspective that really sort of opened your eyes to how everything, all the other dots that got connected?
It changed it. Mm, I, I I really, there's nothing I can say that because again, when I read the breadth and width of all the things I'm reading,
Mm-hmm.
it's more so confirmation. Like for me, like many people, because they're coming from just one singular point of view of a verse or a scripture, or because their tradition said, yes, it's more of a shock value. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's always
Because
attention. Even yes,
you've
even like
got so
when
much study up to that point.
yes, like so it's all inclusive. Like, okay, now this is carrying more so everything all together.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I said, even intermixed with the Book of Mormon, and like it's just for all these are just different pieces of a puzzle. And as long as I keep open-minded my side, then I can see how they fit together. And there's this
Mm-hmm.
harmony, and just someone speaking from a different perspective. Even in the Gospels, you have certain events that are repeated like are repeated within the gospels, but just like the different things, and no one questioned that because it's just someone else's point of view, and
Mm-hmm.
they see it something slightly different than someone else from their vantage point. So for me, that's all I'm looking at. There's different vantage points of how it is. Some may be more primitive, some more advanced, but you see it from that perspective of that individual, and they all are telling the truth from their perspective versus
Mm-hmm.
them just blatantly telling a lie. And as long as I'm getting the gist of it, what the moral lesson, like me being distinguished between good and evil, or maturity or immaturity, as one
Uh-huh.
of our brothers prefer to use, being mature and immature, then that's the whole meaning of life, to keep the commandment, which is to love my brothers. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, as long as there's no breaking that, then I can be accepted.
Let
Like,
me ask you this, because I think at this point it's been well established. You probably have studied way more than me. Um, so there was the concept found in Owaspy, and it's not just found in Owaspy, but I can't find it in the Bible, and I want
okay.
to ask you. So the concept is eternal progression.
Hmm.
Now, when I first ran across that in Owaspy, one, it made a lot of sense, but at the same time, it was such a new idea to me that it took me a while to sort of assimilate it into my head,
Hmm.
because when especially in Adventist, you're either going Adventists believe in soul sleep, or like a nihilism, where there is no eternal hell, it's eternal basically non-existence, but then heaven is like a destination,
Hmm.
and eventually it's going to be brought back to the earth and be the new Jerusalem, right? But either way, it's kind of like a final destination sort of mentality. Is there anything in the Bible that you found that would complement the idea of eternal progression, like maybe not as detailed in Owaspy, but just sort of like in the same vein?
For me, when Jesus was telling the disciples that he had many mansions, like and those being mansion, for me, from perspective, being mansion worlds, as opposed to something
So
here. No,
layers.
there's many mansions. If there was nothing that nature, then he would never tell them so. Well,
Hmm.
where are these many mansions? Like, what were they on top? Like, again, there's nothing that goes into detail about that. But there's many
Right.
mansions. Okay, are we just going to be here? But no. Then we have in Hebrews where, I guess you call it the Hall of Faith, Hebrews chapter 11, where it talks about Abraham was seeking a country, a spiritual country, beyond that which was physical. Okay, so now we're talking about in a different dimension altogether. When I combine those get many mansions now, and Abraham was searching for something more. Otherwise, he would never gave up or left. where he was comfortable in Ur of Chaldees, if you will.
Yeah.
He had all this wealth and everything, but he still was seeking for something more, something that would last, understanding the finite nature of this creation, or how it's going to all break down. The idea that if you look at Hebrew, you look at eternity, it's a concrete language. So the idea that it's just over the horizon is eternity, just outside of my view of seeing things, versus it's going to be something that's stagnant forever. But that only comes with study. You deeper dive into it versus just accepting what the minister say, who's going to a seminary school, who only has a limited understanding himself because that's what you've been programmed to give to the congregation, versus independent study. You get that nuance. So when I read the Owaspy and I having all the information, it was nothing so far-fetched for me. Even the whole idea that there's gods. Well, at the very beginning, when you look at Elohim, in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and earth. We always knew that was God. That was plural. Now, some people said it's the royal we talking about self. But either way, like I look at it as my body. Okay, I can have a heart. I can say that my heart is pumping my blood, many cells. Or I can say that, yes, I am pumping my blood. I can control it if I'm thinking calmly. Well, the whole or the portion, that portion that's a portion of me can do it, as well as my whole being being present. So either way, it's still part of the creator. And so like it's just your perspective. So we fight over these terminology, but both are right. The creator is in control of this dynamic, and nothing's escaping him, but he allows, just like we have an involuntary system. In the creator, we're the involuntary system, if you will, but he still has involuntary portion that he controls within us because he's all throughout, like in every portion of our being. But if you want to think about, we're the involuntary, we're the ones that can skew things up, but he has a corrective mechanism as well within his being. So nothing's outside of his control. So whether you want to talk about gods, like in our heart with all its cells, or the creator overall, both are true. And people argue, like I said, people argue over things that I think that are like, it's meaningless. Like, okay, just understand both perspectives, and all I get understand what the other person is saying, and then you just add to yourself, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right too. And together we have a full picture, and that is right.
Yeah, when we come together and start focusing on what we have in common instead of fighting over differences, we're going to start. Well, we're going to do several things. One, we're going to get along, which is a huge success. But we're going to be able to actually start comparing and, sort of collecting a library of truths, and that those two things alone, getting along and collecting, truths from different perspectives is big. That's one of the huge blessings that I've experienced in my short time as a faithist. Well, just not being a Christian, but as a faithist for sure, like understanding that it's all connected. Like we're all part of creation. We're all part of the body of the creator. Like there's no reason to fight. Like let's get along.
We're all going to return to the source. That's the ultimate definition, like in the Matrix movie. We're all going to return back. It's just some people want to take a longer journey than others because they take a long route. Yes, the broad pathway. And so your hope that each person will make the most use out of this particular experience to further them along so they get faster. But some people, they love the corporeal, and therefore they have a longer pathway to get there than others.
They're going to have more lessons that they've learned than some of us. So they might be.
the
longer the road, the more lessons they're going to have under their belt.
Perhaps,
I'm not sure if
this is my perspective. If you can tap into the eternal mind, all connected to the creator. So if you're connected and you are able to sympathize and see through the eyes of others, then all those experiences are at your fingertip without you having to go through it individually. So their experiences, your experiences, my experience, just like when we read in the Nuwaspy, like being able to tell sounds and distinct and know what color is associated with it. Well, just looking at an individual, I'll be able to tell their whole history, even from afar, even if
Yeah.
I'm a million miles away. I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on which perspective. So sure, they may get more experiences and hurt, but at the same time, you can know as well because the creator knows, like, and just altering where you're going toward to be in alignment and be on the same vibration with the creator. We will everyone we know as their known. I guess that's how the Bible places it in. The mechanism for that is a light, of fire, and ignite, according to
Yeah.
Wasmi.
Well,
I
okay,
don't
so not advocating for the long road, but I'm just saying
know.
I definitely would rather take a quicker path as quick as possible.
Yes.
Um, okay, so let me ask you that. So, what are you studying right now that's got you like excited and on fire? Like, what? I know you just you've studied a lot, but what right
Mhm.
now has captured your attention?
I've been looking at the Aquarian Gospels. That I guess if this was the most time I spent recently. There's no single book that I'm going through. Um,
Mhm.
so I guess the collective nature of it when I precept and one thing upon another, and it brightens that particular ideal or thought form. That is exciting to me when I see similarities.
The
Thinking
connections.
the connection, yes. When the puzzle is being fit, when I found, aha, this is an end piece, and this piece right here, okay, it fits snugly. Those are exciting moments to me. Those are the
Yeah.
moments of consciousness or awakening in a certain degree. This I'm trying to
That's
think of the
cool.
books. I'm thinking of the books I'm reading right now. So I know, like, on Sabbath, I'm going through the with class that I'm doing. During the week, the Aquarian Gospel, I know that I was working more on the Kabbalion as well, looking at it
Hmm.
from that viewpoint. And then, of course, we're going through different portions of the WASP on Wednesday. Um, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think anything specific. There's nothing specific that I can think of that is just the nuances. Um,
Yeah. Finding the
uh,
connections is really exciting, especially when you dig into history and
yeah,
you find a connection that it feels like nobody has found, like
yeah.
because of the different languages and the different titles and the different, and my wife, she's a big researcher and she'll come to me with connections and we'll look into it. And it's like, it's exciting to see the connections that point to the creator, and
Hmm.
even the distortions and the lies and the deceptions are exciting to find because it just gives you a better picture of everything.
Yeah.
It's cool. Like where's I have a book I'm reading about Akkadian and Babylon, like the
Hmm.
original text. I just finished the Epic of Gilgamesh, and
Okay.
it's all compiled in I have it, but I just have to get up and get it.
Okay,
It's
that's
pretty
fine.
cool. And you start, it's like a time machine, you start getting into
Okay.
the mindset of these people from 10,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, and you know understanding the human experience, I guess.
Hmm.
It's cool.
What hit you? What's hit you so far? Like, what's a specific example from? I mean, the Gilgamesh that stuck out to you, the perspective that, like, huh?
Well, the quest for understanding about life after death, and the sort of the quest for eternal life, and this it seemed like the more Gilgamesh tried to put his own effort into his quest, he kept failing and failing and failing. And finally, he ultimately did fail. Um, One of the things I found interesting in earlier in this book, because it is a compilation of the cuneiform tablets,
Hmm.
is the law codes, how they viewed crime and how they viewed justice, and how to be fair. It was pretty strict. Some of it was really strict. Like, you didn't get a second chance. You just get, you're done.
Yeah.
It was just really interesting to read that. Like, wow, this is, and a lot of it was really similar to stuff I've read in the Old Testament, but even similar to how we view justice now. And some of it was really different. So it was interesting to be able to see the similarities and the differences there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I think I've read portions of Gilgamesh. As far as complete, I think that's a no-go. But I have to brush up on it too. If you send me a passage, or at least that portion of it. Well, I guess you have it in a book form, so never mind.
Yeah, you can look it up, but the tablets that they're being translated from aren't complete. So there's a lot of speculation. Like, there's a couple of tablets where there's not even an attempt to translate it. It's more of the editor is basically summarizing. We think this is the theme of the tablet based upon all of our, research and stuff, but they don't even bother to translate it because it's so broken up. But you get the idea of what it's about.
Gotcha.
Just unfortunate that so much of it had been crumbled up and lost. But.
I know you said things of interest. I know the whole idea of, I guess one of the aha moments when I did start reading the philosophy was the whole idea of the sinking of Pan and the Ring of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
And like, okay, that would make sense. Like why this region is so much volcanic activity, because something actually push it down, as opposed to where else in the world is this? What could it contribute for this being like this? But that accounting, that was something that was like, okay. Again, I know some people, take a hostile view at the Bible, and just like it's a lie to them. And again, sometimes it could be because of how it was presented. I realized at the same time, like, because someone came at me with the philosophy, as far as, well, God slaughtered all these people in Austin. How do you describe that? And they would come in the same angle, like someone would come from the Bible, all this violence and everything. And it's like, it just depends on how open the person is. Because in any record, if you look at it, then someone can find something to condemn, but you have to understand the context and understand the motivation of the people behind it. And I think that's, again, why most people will look at hostily at someone else, because they give all this grace for their position, but that same grace or grace is never extended to the other side to see, okay, whether they can read it to understand versus reading it to refute. I guess that's the best way. That's what I found with most people I've talked to who have a different view. They're reading never for understanding. Give you an example. They'll read someone's commentary. Well, that's never how I went about it. I read the text myself, as opposed to getting someone else's opinion and then being tainted by their opinion and focusing it through their lens. And then that's how I'm interpreting the text. The same thing with philosophy. If I read anything that dealt with, okay, someone's viewpoint versus just what does it say itself, unadulterated, I have no desire to hear. If I read any text, I want to read it for myself without anyone's else opinion in it. I want to draw the conclusion myself. And I think that's the problem, especially when you talk to Christian brothers or sisters. They have no stomach to look at anything outside of that, because it's just the Bible can only be the only thing. And anything else, they're looking to ways to refute it. If it's never in the Bible, then it's as though it never existed. And you can bring it up again. You can bring up the point that the Bible, the books in it. How about the book of remembrance in Malachi? The books of King talks about several books and it's also in this book. The rest of the records and
the rest of the stories in the book of the whatevers.
So like how are we dealing with this? If it's unerring, how about your book has already been cut off and you've been given a curated form?
Reader's Digest version.
And it's up to you to go seek it out more to try to find out other information, as opposed to holding to a doctrine that was made up at the Council of Nicaea, that this is the unaltered word when they already altered it. Even the book of Revelation, it was debated on what that was going to go in the Bible. Oops.
Yeah, I think it was basically just one dude who just had a lot of political clout, sort of squeezed at the end, but nobody wanted the book of Revelation to even be in the Bible. As far as my understanding goes,
But
it was not unanimous, I believe.
yes, and like that's what I'm saying. Like no one does the history of it, the historicity of it. They just assume and they just trust whatever the person's saying, even though the Bible says that in the end people will be deceived and and deceiving one another. Like I'm reading like for comprehension. Like I'm looking at it like, okay, how is this happening? And I'm looking around and around and around. And, that's how it's happening. It's happening in real time. Because you're unwilling to study it deeply, you can easily fall into a trap.
Mhm.
The religious trap with it versus what is the text actually saying for stuff. Even when it comes to the Bible itself, are people looking for understanding, or
Right.
it's just a social club? And I feel
Yeah.
like the latter is what most people go for.
Trying to confirm what you already believe. Yeah.
Yes, what you were told, what your grandma did, what your mom did, and or your father, your grandfather. It's like that's shallow.
Yeah.
I still want something deeper and deeper. And I think that's part of what draw like with those who are in the WASP group. I know
Yeah.
that each one of us, in order to actually to receive this at any extent, we had to be open. You had to
Yes.
want something deeper than just the same old, same old.
Yeah.
And different people are ready for it. Other people, they have to go through a little bit more
Mhm.
to get to that understanding.
Yeah, for sure. When my wife and I read the story of Pan and sort of all the surrounding context of that, the idea that there was like a starting point of sort of like the signs and symbols and the knowledge of the creator, and then it spread.
Mhm.
And then we started looking around the world like, well, then if it's spread, then there's got to be like echoes of that. And then we started seeing the echoes of it, and like the flood myths are all pretty much on every continent, and but then the symbols, cave art, and just like the way people conduct like sort of prehistoric religious, Aboriginal and Native American, and just like there's a lot more in common, and you could see this dissemination
Mhm.
of this information. That was one of the first things when we read that, and then we actually started seeing. That's what it got us like. We're gonna have to do a lot of research because there's
Mhm.
so much stuff to have to connect this web of truth. Everything's connected, and it comes back. The further back we go, the less religious it gets, and it's more of just the human experience of us trying to get along with each other and the divine trying to understand our place in the world, and then it got way too religious really fast.
And it may have its root in something that is positive. I guess from my perspective, I've shared this with someone else from the WASP conference. But the whole idea that at the congregation I used to go to initially, no one could dance. And
Oh, okay.
I understood why, like because you can get kind of raunchy and
Mhm.
just for purity's sake and everything. But to just make it a rule without realizing, hey, there are people who are gifted with their body, and
Mhm.
then to prohibit them when that's a gift from the creator, you isolate that person. You
Right.
make them feel like there's nothing used. Their talents go to waste because you made this hard rule that's never in the scripture, but you made it as a safeguard to protect. But now it's actually ending up to destroy or taking away that vibrancy, that
Right.
life that could be added to your number in a different and unique fashion. Or just the whole idea there's no instrumental music. Like, okay, well, practically speaking, if you're going on a missionary journey, would it be appropriate to take a organ piano with you on the ship? You must have an organ piano to worship in spirit and truth.
Yeah.
In practical, people have like, why would the Bible tell you this?
I remember growing up. This is funny. You're taking me back. I remember the first time somebody brought like a keyboard into
Mhm.
church for like special music. Oh man, you could just cut the tension with a knife. Like who authorized this electric keyboard in here? And then somebody else brought like what was it? one of those lap guitars, those slide guitars, for like some like a country style music. I just remember, even as a kid, the tension, like nobody was appreciating the talent or the music. It was all judgment and all concern about appearances. And it's like thick. It's really distraction. It's sad.
Again, that's
because the music was beautiful. There was nothing wrong with the music. It was just the delivery of it. They had a problem with it.
And that's an issue, because the whole message, like I said, of the Bible is to get you to the point where you are loving. Again, looking at the Aquarian gospel, Christ means love. That is the meaning. All knowledge that you're able to draw, like the spiritual portion. I know in different contexts it means different things. It can mean all knowledge, I believe. But you're drawn in that. And each person can draw that, but being discriminative of that nature and now never allows you to manifest any love. If there's no appreciation or anything, it's just, well, what are you doing? Like how are you flaming your gift and being of service to your fellow man? That kind of mindset is what, I guess, yes, I have no desire to be around. I mean, I appreciate when people do bring things of that nature. I had a roommate in the second congregation I went to. Yes, music was allowed, like musical instrument, and he had a gift. I was thinking, like, if he grew up where I was, then even though he went to school for music, he could never honor the creator with it.
Yeah.
And that would be such a loss. Such a loss.
Yeah.
So again, like people, because rules are made, understand why. But at the same time, you have to continue to evaluate, is it still valid at this point? Or is it just a tradition we're holding on to because it's your legacy? Your grandmother, your grandfather, whoever, great did it, and we're never going to change it in honor of them. Well, then it's no longer about the creator, then. You made them your God.
Have you seen The Fiddler on the Roof?
I have no. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
You have got to watch it. When I was a kid, I literally thought the whole movie was about somebody playing the fiddle on the roof. The movie is exactly what we're talking about. Tradition. And it's brilliant. It's really good movie. Wow. And how tradition can hold the community together, but there's also a cost for it as well. And it really does a great job illustrating the cost of it. Yeah.
What version? Do you remember? What year did it come? What year did it come out? So that I
don't know. It's in this probably maybe the 60s or 70s.
Okay.
It had Barbara Streisand in it when she was in her 20s, I think, something like that.
Okay, that's what was needed. Barbara Streisand. Yeah. I mean, if there's other fillers on the roof, then that would be able to distinguish that in her.
Oh, yeah.
Distinguish that one immediately.
That's why I asked. Streisand in it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good. I've only seen it one time, and I need to watch it again. It's really good.
Okay, I would have never thought. Yeah, like you said, just listen to it. Listen to the title. I would never guess it was about tradition.
You'll get it. You'll get it right away. Like that's an appropriate title. Let me know what you think about it when you get around to it. It's probably, I can't remember. It's a long movie, maybe 2 hours, but it's good.
Well, after seeing the extended version of Lord of the Rings, that's a short movie.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is like 12 hours. You're gonna really go through the whole thing.
So yeah, that's okay.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. I'm really super glad to be able to have these types of conversations, to be able to get to know each other, different perspectives. You've researched stuff that I haven't, and this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to take. When Oahspe talks about the seventh era, the new sort of like the new religion that is coming, it's a religion of people who are seeking the truth individually, trying to live according to their highest light, and to figure out how to tap into that love, that harmony, and to be able to incorporate that with each other. And this is what it's going to take. So I really appreciate you coming on. And any final words before we end it?
Well, yeah, I do appreciate this as well. Thank you for being a host. Smooth transition from one thing to another. I know I had like 3 different pages just in case you wanted to go to my whole, but actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages that I had wrote down just in case you wanted.
It takes like a whole week to upload it to YouTube. It takes like my computer.